you look around, there's no robot that checks most of the boxes. So the first thought we had, oh my God, we have to build our robot ourselves. That's when in the beginning we thought we can do it better, we can build the perfect robot, until we started doing it. Today it is very difficult to compete with Chinese, where just the density of the supply chain elements is so high that it's much easier for them to build good hardware, high quality hardware, cheaper. So our technology is new, such technology doesn't exist yet. So in a way, there's no market yet for that. Sometimes when we also talk to the customers, they cannot tell us about their pain, they kind of don't know it themselves. So before I can try it out in the market, it needs to do the job, and that requires a lot of components working together. If it's unsafe, right, then I cannot put it in the customer's hands. Shall we kind of build our own robot, because the other companies who have their robots will want to have the whole ecosystem for themselves? We will know as we go.
Welcome to Robotics.Scaled, the podcast about hard things about building and scaling robotics. We talk about go-to-market, commercialization, fundraising, and what it really takes to become a global drone and robotic market leader. I'm your host, Vanessa Warncke, and I'm here today with Professor Dr. Yulia Sandamirskaya, professor at ZHAW here in Zurich, and founder of YuRo. Yulia has spent over 20 years at the intersection of AI, robotics, and neuroscience research, and now she's the founder of YuRo. But before we dive into today's episode, a big thank you to our location partner, the DARE Campus, which is supporting this podcast and hosting us here at the DARE Campus. Yulia, really happy to have you here and warm welcome.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. It's a pleasure to be here.
So you spent years in researching neuroscience, AI, and robotics. What made you do the leap into entrepreneurship and starting your own company?
Yeah. I think there were two main reasons. One is that I have been observing for many years how technology is being developed at the university, but lacking to see how it gets transferred into the real life and having impact. We always promise this impact in all the projects, but most of the projects, they just stop before anyone takes them to the market. And I really wanted to see that technology going into the market in my lifetime. So I thought I have to do it myself, right? So I have to make sure that we somehow break through this wall, bringing technology to the market. And the second reason was more like a researcher and me, a scientist. We like solving puzzles. And building a company, it's like a very complex puzzles with many different pieces, extremely interdisciplinary. My research work has already been very interdisciplinary, and I find it fascinating to see analogies between different disciplines, to see how things come together. And entrepreneurship, to additional components come into play. Business considerations and customer consideration, much more people, business and people puzzles, and I just find it fascinating as a task to tackle.
Yeah, I really like the analogy of calling it a puzzle, and we will talk about different bits and pieces from that puzzle today. But first of all, for people who hear about YuRo for the really first time, can you describe what is YuRo?
Mm-hmm. So YuRo is our spin-off from ZHAW. We are building technology at YuRo that are supposed to make robots more flexible, more adaptive, and safer among humans. And this has two components. One is that we allow robots to see faster so that they can be more reactive and by that just safer, avoiding collisions with people. And another component that they also learn faster, so that everyone who buys a robot can personalize it more easily to his or her needs. So we hope that this will open up new markets for robots and make them into useful assistants.
Yeah. And take us a bit to the beginning. Like, what led you to found YuRo? Why now?
So actually, the first incarnation of YuRo is already a couple years old. We have incubated this idea at Intel. When I was at Intel, there was a program there, Intel Incubator of Disruptive Ideas. And this was one of the disruptive ideas that made it to the incubator. And there we worked out the business details, their potential product to market fit, and worked on this business idea. At the end of this exercise of the incubator, we could have continued at Intel, and at the same time I got a professorship at ZHAW and coming back to Switzerland. So I thought it would make sense to go back to research, create the research lab, create a more firm foundations for our technology, and then spin out from there. So that's now YuRo 2.0, you could say, which now starts from ZHAW.
And let's move a little bit from your product also to the market. So you could go into manufacturing, into hospitals, elderly care. Take us a bit on the journey, like what are your considerations here in terms of market?
Yeah, so if you think of robotics, the first thing that comes to mind is, of course, manufacturing, right? Because especially in kind of manufacturing with long cycles, like car manufacturing, the robots has been used since 1950s. And those robots, very strong, very fast, very precise, not very flexible. So it takes a while to configure them so that they do their job, but then they do their job for years. If you look into manufacturing more broadly, where smaller companies produce smaller batches of products, and these products change once in a while, for that robotics traditionally was not flexible enough. And that is why this more flexible manufacturing is a kind of obvious application for next generation of robots, which are more flexible, which can be reconfigured more easily. So yes, manufacturing would be a natural market. However, it's a complex market. People already have systems installed, the processes there that produce their goods. Any automatization is a disruption. So the solutions that go into this market, they need to be solid and established so that the transition can happen within days, maybe even hours. Then this market is fragmented. So all these companies, they all work differently. They have their different processes. They're not very open about talking about their processes to everyone. Got a lot of secrets in there. So when we incubated this idea at Intel, we actually were advised to go to manufacturing as a better market. And we kind of incubated this idea with the manufacturing in mind. But when I got my freedom to choose the market, I decided against that because I find for a little small startup, it is a difficult market to penetrate. Usually if a robotic company has some product, for instance, universal robots, they have cobot arms. They have an army of integrators that bring these arms into different applications, CNC machine tending, different machine tending, lab automation. Every application, every part of the kind of ecosystem have their own integrator. And as one little company, it's very difficult to kind of build up an ecosystem like that. Healthcare is different because in healthcare, there's much less automation out there. There's definitely need for automation because the personnel is overworked. There are different estimates between 30 or 70% of time, like nurses and care personnel, they do auxiliary tasks. They either bring things from A to B, they fix things, they clean things, not really do the jobs that are in their job description. But it's not so easy to bring robots into this market. And our technology actually targets specifically dynamic environments. So environments where unpredictable things happen. And if there are humans around, then most certainly unpredictable things can happen. So I think our technology is differentiated particularly well in those environments where you cannot optimize a person away because your customer is there next to the robot and not somewhere far away from the factory. So that's why we decided healthcare is a good beach market, kind of starting market for us. And then we had a choice between hospitals and care facilities. And hospitals are kind of big enterprises, relatively slow, complex decision processes with complex constraints, with a lot of regulatory constraints. So again, for a small startup with groundbreaking new technology, not the easiest market to enter. Care facilities are smaller. So many of them are much more agile and flexible. They're interested in becoming more modern, becoming more attractive for their customers. So it's easier to start conversation with them. Also easier to get feedback, run pilot projects, get feedback and iterate and kind of co-develop the products together. So that's why we decided to go into this direction. And then from the technology perspective, from the robotic perspective, the environment there is close to kind of natural home environment, which also makes it interesting for us. So if we develop our product towards working well in these care facility environments, the step towards homes and have an assistant for people at home is smaller than going from factory floor to home.
Yeah, these are really interesting considerations and sounds like quite complex. When I listen to you, I get the idea that time to market and sales cycles were quite important. Now, in hindsight, what would you say, what was the most crucial criteria that let you go that path?
So the ability to start co-developing with the future customers together, and the willingness of the customers, to take a product that's maybe not 100% works perfectly, but they already can use it and can provide us feedback early. So I think that's an important consideration. And then we start with the local market, because also robotics is not something that you can, send an update per email, especially in the beginning when we mature our technology. It is important to physically get into this facility and have a look ourselves how things look like. And that, of course, you can only do local, right? You cannot start globally. So that was also important to have enough density of facilities in the vicinity.
Yeah, let's dive a little bit deeper into this commercial side of looking into ideal customer profile. You already mentioned some differences in terms sales cycle. So again, on paper, they all look attractive, but can you share a little bit more the differences between them, and especially again between hospitals and care facilities?
So in any case, because we're such new and groundbreaking technology, our first customers are those pioneers, like the visionaries, people who believe in robotics, who are fascinated by technology. And not happy with the status quo. So they need to be, brave. They need to be entrepreneurial themselves. They need to be ready to be first movers. We find those people both in hospitals and care facilities, but in care facilities they have a little bit more say and can influence things a bit quicker. In a hospital, again, the processes are complicated, so it's easier to come to a hospital with a more mature solution on a higher technology readiness level, because there it needs to work right away. So you need to be able to run a pilot without us in the loop. And people need to like it, and it cannot fail, because if the robot is annoying, is failing, then people will not use it. So I think to go in the large hospitals, we need to be a bit further along the development line.
Yeah, and I was about to ask, because in the end, it's a lot about the focus, right? And how do you split the focus between this long bet, and I mean both, right? Hospitals and manufacturing seem a bit like the long-term game, the long-term plan. So how do you split also internally a bit the focus here, focusing on what's working now, where you can sell now and run pilots, versus where you wanna go in the future?
So we definitely focus on shorter term, what we can sell now, promote now. We have an intermediate step, because so in the end, the final solution, the robot that moves around the physical system, is not something we can or won't build right away. So we want to work with robot manufacturing companies who already have robotic solutions that look and work decently enough. And these robot manufacturers can be our first customers. So we kind of sell our software, our systems to them as they develop solutions. So this intermediate step allows us to go to market sooner, before the solutions are ready for the end customer. And we collaborate with a number of companies, so for instance with Robotics in Germany, so they're robot manufacturers, and with Auronic Robotics, it's another company where I'm also a co-founder. They're a robot integrator, so they take robots of different manufacturers and then try to enable applications with this robot across domains, actually. So they go manufacturing, logistics, retail, and healthcare. And so we can kind of sell our systems, our software to these companies, and then there's a little kind of time buffer, and then they develop applications on their time scale. And we do both, but we at the same time also talk to the end customers, to the care facilities and so on, so that our software is developed such that we solve their problems as well. Yeah, one path like that is through Neura. So Neura, one of their kind of products, one of their ideas is Neuraverse, and it's a little bit like an app store for robotic skills. So they kind of create an infrastructure so that different companies can develop skills, develop applications for their robots, and can put them on the marketplace. And that's, of course, one way how this software could be then licensed or spread further.
Yeah. Now, when you started, you probably had a bit of the choice, right, of going into hardware and building your own robots. And now I described you went the other route. Have you ever considered going and building the hardware yourself as well, like building the full robot?
Absolutely, we did. Because if you look around, no hardware is perfect. If you do it the correct way, you talk to the customers, you see the environments in which robots need to act. And then you can imagine, okay, how shall the robot look like? What shall the robot be able to do? And if you look around, there's no robot that checks most of the boxes. So the first thought we had, oh my God, we have to build our robot ourselves. And there are different aspects, like the mobility. It needs to have good wheels so it can go on different floors. Ideally, it would have some combination of wheels, but also ability to do little steps at least. It needs to be robust, needs to be able to go sideways, not only straight away. Navigation needs to be done nicely. There are some safety features on navigation that are very important. You want to have this socially aware navigation. And then, as you go up the stack, the arms, the hands, the fingers, there are so many details. And I think you have to get it all right for customers to like it and want to use this robot, want to interact with this robot. And we are not quite there yet. So neither Chinese colleagues nor our German or European colleagues. That's why in the beginning we thought we can do it better. We can build the perfect robot until we started doing it on our very limited university budget. And this is because of a huge enterprise. One always underestimates the complexity of the task, but in hardware, in this mechatronics, it's very complex. And today it is very difficult to compete, for instance, with Chinese, where just the density of the supply chain elements is so high that it's much easier for them to build good hardware, high quality hardware, cheaper. So that's why we decided to focus on software. On the other hand, the software today is the bottleneck. So everyone is collecting a lot of data, everyone is learning large models with the hope to get the first best model that will solve all these complex tasks. So the focus today is on software, also globally. And hardware, people take it for granted. So people have seen we can build robots that are complex. We can build robots that are compliant. So the hardware will be fine. Someone will take care of it, and some people do take care of that. Yeah, so that was the reasoning.
Yeah, and you mentioned the hardware can be the bottleneck. What makes it so challenging? Share a little bit with us. And what is the toughest challenge here concerning the hardware?
Mm-hmm. So the hardware, it's physics, friction, things wear and tear. You have to design things well, mechanics. It needs to be safe. If this hardware, this robot arm is next to humans, it cannot have sharp edges. You cannot be able to pinch the finger and the joint. There's the kind of safety regulation because it's a machine that moves. So you need to do this safety certification. And it combines actuation, motors that need to be good, they need to be strong, but safe, fast, precise. They're all a little bit contradicting constraints and requirements. And then sensors, you need to integrate them. You have to power them somehow. You have a heat dissipation problem. You have compute somewhere. Then do you do distributed compute? Do you do central compute? There are just so many components that all need to come together, all need to work perfectly. And as you build them, you build here, there things start falling apart and breaking. It's complex. There's just complexity in hardware. And cost, of course, as well, because things cost something. You have to deliver them from somewhere. Supply chain needs to be in place. It's much more heterogeneous than just software development.
Yeah. Yeah, I see. And you still decided to take on that challenge and change something. And if we move our conversation a little bit back again also to your go-to-market. So you mentioned working closely with OEMs, with robotics manufacturers like Neura. That also poses a certain risk, right, about relying on them. How do you balance that risk?
So there's a certain way in which you can kind of abstract away the manufacturing, not get locked in one manufacturer. Today, in terms of software, most robotic companies, they use similar low-level software stack, like ROS2. And most of them, for navigation, they use more or less the same software. So you can switch between platforms relatively easy. And we try to design our software so it has this layered structure. There's some layer that is neuro-specific, but then there's some layer on top of that is hardware agnostic. So you can keep some flexibility. And the intelligence, it comes on top of the low-level kind of actions, low-level control. And that layer can be robot independent. Then our technology, one of our claim to fame is that we can learn quickly. And it means we can also calibrate our system faster to different hardware. So if we replace the robot arm, now has different motors, they have slightly different characteristics, we run this automatic calibration, adaptation of the system that can take it into account quickly.
Oh, that's interesting. And I'm also quite curious now, moving a bit more to the business model. So what's your business model with YuRo? Like, how do you make money?
So we have these kind of different components. The biggest chunk of our work is software, is an AI framework. It's a new AI framework, so it's not just training some agents that feed from a large foundational model. It is also not training our own large foundational model. It's much more kind of modular framework. And now this software, licensing this software through Neuraverse or through other channels is one possible revenue stream. Now, part of this kind of whole framework is sensing. So we enable faster visual sensing, which then enables safe and more agile control. So the sensor is another product that we can sell either to robot manufacturers or to robot integrators or to whoever wants to build their own robot. Researchers or thinkers or young startups, right? So just a sensor, like new sensor that allows the system to quickly do visual analytics all around the robot. And then the more longer term vision is to have these full applications, like for elder care facility. There we will start with pilot projects and we'll try to get them funded, maybe by some state funding, EU projects, because that's a bit longer term kind of perspective, requires a bit more resources. And that will become a revenue maybe in a year or two.
Yeah, then, as you said, it's important to stay close to the market, right? So it sounds like you're going through the OEM to the other manufacturers to get scale quickly, while at the same time also doing this direct sale and direct pilots with your customers. Take us a bit more through this like pilot journey, because we also know in robotics that can be quite challenging, right? How do you get then paid pilots and ensure you can then actually, after the pilot phase, also convert at scale and roll out the actual robot?
These are very good questions. Ask me in 3 months. Because we just started. Now we started in March with the company and we are now preparing our first pilots. So my first step was to visit a couple care facilities, talk to people, make a list of possible applications for the pilot. Already figure out a little bit what will they be willing to pay for, how could it work, financing a project like that, because they cannot just take money out of their pocket, right? They have budgets, they have to plan it. So I think really paid pilots we can plan probably for next year. And this year we will do kind of learn before earn. So we'll have some pilots to collect feedback, also collect some data. I actually have a plan. It would be great to have kind of a living lab concept where we could just collect a lot of data in many care facilities, like no faces, just the objects that would help us train the models. So in elder care facilities, paid pilot, I think, is only possible if we are already so confident that the pilot will be successful. So if it's successful, they buy the system. And the payment for the pilot is taken into account. So I wouldn't come with them, ask them for a paid pilot where I'm like 50-50, maybe it will work, maybe not. So I think we need to have more confidence that we give them something that might work for a year.
Yeah, and that takes some time to build, right? To ensure then also that your product is ready.
Yeah.
Now moving a bit more to go-to-market, what we often see is that founders focus a lot on the technical side to get the product ready, right? As you said, a lot of puzzle pieces that have to come together. It's hardware, it's software. But how early should founders start focusing on go-to-market, and why do you think that's important?
Yeah. So I think the moment you become a founder, you have to go out and check your market. And then you can develop your technology at the university lab like that. We get in love with our technology. It has its own logic, and there's design, there's art in it. You just build this piece of art and piece of technology. The moment when you're thinking of making it a product, I think by definition almost, you have to go and talk to your customer and figure out what exactly this product is. And then go back and develop a product out of technology. I think it's very clearly you need to differentiate the technology, and the robot can be just a piece of technology. It's not a product yet. A product is at the moment when it solves some problem for the customer. So if you have a humanoid robot, it only becomes a product if you sell it to some end customer. when it also has the software in the loop, and you solve some task for the customer. And to know which task, how to solve it, all the nitty-gritty details, I think you have to go out there. So I would recommend going out and checking the market before you found the company. Because you found the company when you already know there is a market and we can make a product for this market based on our technology. Only then you go out and start building the product. Because when you have a product and you have your hammer and you go around looking for nails, might work, but most probably it won't be a perfect fit.
Yeah, and it's such an important point, right? Again, going back to the market, really understanding what's the pain in the market, what are the market dynamics right now, and understanding if the problem is there, if it's frequent, is it visible, is it costly, and understanding if what you're building is also enough for people to switch at some point. Now, for founders that are at this step right now and thinking about incorporating maybe a research project into a company, a product, what signals should they watch out for when they go out and test the market?
So I have learned in this Intel's incubator, which was an amazing learning experience, that you should go for a product if you have a feeling that for your customer, it's not just like a vitamin and nice to have, but it's a painkiller for the horrible migraine that they have, that they hardly survive without it, and your product really solves a real problem. So that's maybe very high bar, maybe too high for all startups, but I think it's important to make sure that you solve a real problem that people want to solve, and that they're ready to pay money for solving this problem. Otherwise, you can have another research exercise. Now, in the form of a startup, there are some startups out there in Europe, robotic startups as well, who survive for decades just by doing projects, research projects, European research project. They are maybe one company that can build like good robots in Europe, and everyone comes to them if they want a company like robot in their consortium. And you can continue doing research for years, also as a company, which is maybe also fine. Like you have less constraints than research at the university. You don't have to teach, but you won't become a company that is selling some product to a customer.
Yeah, in the end, it's all about scaling, right? We said in the beginning of the podcast about how do you become a global market leader, and for that you need product market fit. And also from what I see in the industry, it's a bit like a holy grail. It's so tough to achieve. Because you start out quite broad, you have many use cases, you have many industries you can go into, and then if you compare to SaaS, it's way slower to get to product market fit, right? Because it's not like a software that you can deploy and it's working and just try it on different contexts. You need to do pilots in different use cases, different industries. You need to configure everything to fit that use case and pilots. So it takes like much more time.
Yeah, this is maybe the main challenge in robotics, that the thing needs to work before we can even try it out in the market. So before I can try it out in the market, it needs to do the job, and that requires a lot of components working together, and it probably needs to be certified already, like safety and so on be addressed. So there are so many things I have to do before I can even try it out. So that's makes it more challenging. So this iterative approach, I just put half-ready robot there, works only not obligatory, because if it's unsafe, right, then I cannot put it in the customer's hands. So it's tricky. Tricky.
The question I ask myself so often is also about how do you choose the right use cases instead of going into how can, even before deploying a pilot or a robot in a certain scenario industry, how can you already do a data-driven decision of where to focus? Looking into things like, okay, which industry is now investing heavy into automation? You mentioned regulations earlier, right? To already look into what healthcare facilities take decisions. Hospitals have long sales cycles or procurement cycles versus elderly homes. So what do you think about this a bit more data-driven approach before even starting a pilot or use case?
Definitely. So I think that's part of deciding what shall be our use case, what shall our pilot be about. We went out into the field and talked to people in those care facilities and in hospitals on different levels. So we talked to management, but we also talked to nurses and to care personnel and to logistics people, because like both hospital and care facility, it's like an enterprise which has different facets, not only care sector, but it also catering and gastronomy and cleaning. So it has these different teams. So we talked to them. And then, of course, we read some studies. So there are other people who made some large studies trying to understand the use cases. And that helped us to distill what is the use case, what shall we go for. So yes, data-driven approach is very important, very important. And we need to get as much feedback from different types of analysis in advance as possible.
Yeah, no, that's such a good point you're making. I think also in the go-to-market workshop that we had together, right, there was such a big discussion point about what data is even available, and people are often surprised how much they can already find out. Signals from, are they now hiring automation managers, right, or do they already have logistics or robotics teams in-house? So to really understand a bit the market dynamic, where's the market moving, and is that also matching where you plan to go with your product?
Yeah. We have an ambition there to be slightly ahead of the mainstream. So that makes it maybe a little bit more difficult to kind of foresee where the things will be going, which is maybe difficult, right? It's like a prediction, but about the future. So our technology is new. Such technology doesn't exist yet, meaning no one who is doing that yet. So in a way, there's no market yet for that. And sometimes when we also talk to the customers, they cannot tell us about their pain. They kind of don't know it themselves, right? So you have to kind of elaborate it together or work out together. So if there would be a product like that, would it kind of close some gap, which you maybe were not aware that it would be so helpful and will release so many resources and you can do other things with that. Yeah, so that makes it additionally challenging. That being said, one still should study what is available out there on analytics.
Yeah, but it's a good point, because often you're selling a completely new category and you're selling to buyers who never bought robotics before, who maybe know how to procure software or medtech or clinical equipment, but how do you position that new category to them and how do you make them buy that? Any approach when you talk to customers and prospects that might acquire robots for the first time? How do you approach that?
Yeah, you need to find the right first movers. So the first movers will not be, skeptical people who are suspicious about robotics anyway. It's very difficult to convince people, especially if you don't yet have the product to show. I think the moment when we have the product to show, it gets easier, right? Because then we can show, hey, look, this robot could do this and that, and actually you can observe it for a day. It does that job. For now, so we need to bring some numbers, right, to show them if the robot would be able to solve this task. Those resources would be freed. But what I've been doing most is actually listening to them. So coming into conversation and rather asking questions, like how are processes organized today? And are there any parts that are difficult? And then people come up with ideas where they have the bottlenecks and they start thinking with you. And they come up with ideas that we would maybe even not think of. So that was an even better approach for me, just to go into dialogue. I'm then honestly curious. So, will the robot fit in this environment? And we just discover this together. And very often it helps to actually walk with them. We have some logistics robot in mind. So, okay, let's go and see. So here's the kitchen. And this is how things are done in the kitchen. And it goes on this container. And then the container goes to the elevator. Oh, yeah, by the way, yes, there's a ramp up. So a person has to push this container. Yeah, that's actually a tough job. Yeah, that's actually would be good. And then, they have to make sure it happens fast enough so the food doesn't get cold. And that's where robots actually could do things. Yeah, so that was the most successful so far, just to walk this way where the robot could be, and then together with them discover, there's actually a bottleneck here.
Yeah, and I love that. It's a lot about active listening, right? Because in the end, when people have an inertia to new technologies, it's barely because they're per se against it, but maybe they don't feel understood. Right, so what you're ensuring here is with active listening, you ensure they feel understood and you go along the way with them. You really try to understand what's the job they're doing right now without a robot, and then kicking off the joint discussion of how could a robot support them and making their lives easier.
Absolutely.
Yeah, like that. Now let's move a bit to funding. You're currently fundraising. Can you share a bit at your current stage? What are the metrics that investors ask you about and that are most crucial?
So I think two important things. First, of course, the business plan, right? And there is a lot of uncertainty there, right? Because we know go into this new market. And we still kind of have these different paths that we pursue, direct sales, maybe software, and then through like neural integrators. Maybe it's a sensor. So this uncertainty is, of course, what makes investors a bit uneasy, right? So they want focus. They want clear like business numbers and unit economics and how this could become scalable. We are kind of reasonable and honest. So we do those calculations based on realistic numbers. Sometimes it seems that investors want to see some less realistic numbers. Maybe because they're used to these less realistic numbers from American companies, or like everyone is overinflates the promises. I think we know it from research, from European projects. You always promise the world something that's, of course, it's impossible. So in the end, I'm sometimes reviewing the projects in their lifetime. And in the end of the project, well, of course it was impossible, but everyone knew that it was impossible to get, right? So maybe, we can inflate those promises, be more optimistic. And then another aspect is commitment of the team. I'm a professor at ZHAW, and so I'm like not switching to the startup 100%. So that's what worries them a little bit. So that we have enough people who are 100% there and who can drive the development. So that it's not just me driving the development. So that's why for me it's important that the senior people in my team, that I develop them so that one of them can become the CEO of the company and drive it forward.
Yeah, and what's the one thing that you wish more investors would understand before investing into robotics, or something they underestimate?
Definitely complexity and the timeline, that things take time. But I think there are some investors who already work with robotic companies. They know the game. And then maybe, also, for instance, this commitment question, right? So now I'm committed 120% to this project, and I also see it as part of a larger story. So the university lab will continue producing some technology that we can license and then bring on the market, through YuRo. And then we have partners on the manufacturing side and with the robot integrator. So it's like the whole pipeline, the whole ecosystem that I try to develop. So that may be also an aspect. More generally, so we need investors who understand the complexity, who understand the different facets, and the necessity to work with those end customers early, right? So it's not only about technology development. We need to plan time and also money for those pilots, for feedback from users, collecting the data, training the models.
Yeah, we're already coming to one of our last questions. So now looking a bit back, what are the things about scaling robotics and starting a robotics business that you wished you would have known earlier?
So far, it's all fun. And I don't regret any step. I think it's clear that it's a marathon, not a sprint. So we need a long breath. I did know that fundraising will be more difficult here in Europe than it would have been on the west coast of the US. But I kind of knew that. And I also knew the complexity. I think maybe so far so good. The one thing maybe, it's very difficult to estimate how the field, especially the hardware development, will develop. Can we trust that others will develop robots that are good enough? And will they be willing to work with us on the software side, or will they want to do everything themselves? So that's something I still wish I would know. Shall we kind of build our own robot because the other companies who have their robots will want to have the whole ecosystem for themselves? Or shall we be kind of more open and be ready to cooperate with people who develop the robots? That's still we don't know. We will know as we go.
And I think that's probably one of the most crucial strategic questions that a lot of robotics companies, but also suppliers, are asking themselves right now. Yep. That's shaping also how they're going to scale, right? Mm-hmm. Either doing everything in-house, and then if not, what parts would you outsource, and with whom are you also collaborating?
Yeah. So we keep many things open and ready to adjust and to focus on one or the other thing. So if we need to build a robot, we will build a robot.
You build a robot and then you bring it next time.
Right.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yulia. I think we're already at the end of our really first episode. So thank you for being here, being my first guest at Robotics.Scaled and talking about the tough parts of building hardware and bringing together a global robotics company. Thank you so much. And also again, big thanks to our partner, the Dare Campus, for hosting us here at their studio.